Welcome to the latest Libertas video. Today we are continuing our series on creating the Left Gauntlet of Bayek from Assassin's Creed Origins. And in the previous video we went through the process of taking the template and transferring it onto the leather. Now in this video what we're going to be doing is preparing the leather so that it can be dyed. So going forward right now we are going to be edging this leather, and so I'll take a quick look once again at the template. Once again, this base layer is made out of suede, and then we got the armoring leather here, and then we also have this thinner leather which is going to be part of the buckles, and we'll make some more additional straps. Here you can see the tool that we're going to be using right now. I've forgotten the exact name of it, but essentially what it's going to allow us to do is go around the leather and create a very consistent edge line. That's just going to make it look really nice. You can typically use this if, say, you wanted to inset your threading when you sew the leather. Just gives a more consistent look. It's not too raised, but if you didn't want to do that, you could always go for the more raised look. Just depends on what you're going for. For me, this is simply going to be decorative purpose, so just making it look relatively nice. So I'll get the GoPro camera set up here. We will get the time lapse going, and hopefully everything goes well. We'll show you the end result. So let's get started. All right, so we're back and we have finished up the edging process, so let's take a quick look at it as it sits. Here is the gauntlet, and of course you can see these nice defined edges. One thing I will note is that I went a little too quick and blasted right through one of my lines with this edging tool, so that's just a common thing that I should always say is take your time with this. It is not a race. So I was just getting a little too excited. Luckily for me, this top plate is going to cover it up. You can even see it right here. I slightly missed my line too. But at the end of the day, this is all going to be used to help make a more worn, weathered look. If you make a mistake, make it stylistic. So that's what we're going to be doing with this. Now on to the next phase, which is creating all the holes in the gauntlet, basically punching holes where we're going to be putting rivets, both functional and decorative, and then also eyelets. So for this process, I will note that we are going to be using these thinner rivets because it's only going through one, or at least I should say smaller rivets because it's only going through one layer. So it's just going to be purely decorative. If you look on the Bayek cosplay reference with me, 1, 2, 3, those are the rivets we were going to be doing in just decorative. These three down here, these are going to be holding the straps that actually buckle in on this side as well. So what we're going to do is use Chicago screw rivets, here they're called screw post. I have some brass ones that are going to match up more with the Bayek look, but here's a silver one just as demonstration. You can see if you look closely, they screw into one another. So unlike these decorative ones, which I'm going to have to hammer down, that's pretty permanent until you just rip them apart. But the screw ones we can take apart. So if we mess up with any of the buckle systems or something breaks, we can go back and fix it. So nevertheless, that's what we're going to do there. And then also we have some eyelets that if you look on the back here with his gauntlet, I will eventually make another plate when I finish up the hidden blade that will match on right here, and then it will look a lot more close to this picture. But we will put the eyelets in probably here and here just to prepare for this final piece. So the way we're going to do this is using this leather punch. This is was my grandfather's, and I have inherited it. The way I select which piece to use, as it just swivels around and around and around, is to take my eyelet and I take the post and I decide, or I just test fit to see where it will fit. So right now we're looking at one-handed is not as easy. Probably going to be this guy right here. Yep, and it is. So that's going to be the basically punch that we're going to cut through for the decorative rivets. And then for the Chicago screw rivets, it's probably going to end up being this really large one. For the eyelets, what I found in the past is I don't have a punch that is big enough for the eyelets. So what I've done in the past is I've just taken them, like with the counter gauntlet. I figured out where I'm going to place it, and then I punch 2 holes side by side, kind of overlapping, and maybe I'll be able to show you that. And then I can just push this through. It's still going to be small enough that it won't pose any issues. This thing's not going to rip out once I seal it down, but at the same time, it will give me enough room to work with. So that's the idea of what we're doing, and we'll get started. The one tricky part I will note is that I'm going to have to keep test fitting this on my arm. One of the issues that we're going to have is since this gauntlet needs to conform around my arm, if we were to buckle everything down as is, like put all these plates onto the actual gauntlet, we're going to run into issues because as it curves, all that leather is going to want to stretch. So if we put it down flat, it's going to have to stretch over other thicker pieces of leather. So what we're going to do is test fit it. We'll figure out where one of these pieces is going to sit, and then we'll curve it around the arm and then decide, okay, we'll make a mark where it sits perfectly once it's curved. Now that's going to create this weird look when the gauntlet sits flat. We'll be kind of bunched up, but that will allow us to put it on the arm a lot easier, and it won't have that stiff look that's always going to want to retain back to that flat shape. So I know that's a lot of technical information. Hopefully it makes some sense, but we're going to get started. I'll put the GoPro on, and we'll continue on. So here we go. All right, so welcome back, and you're probably thinking, what the heck just happened? The shirt changed, the shorts changed, and the truth is right after I got done filming that portion about moving in, and before I could get to the time lapse, I realized a lot of these Chicago screw rivets that I had were just a little too small for this project. So here's the original ones that I was showing off, and they work just fine if I were to attach these just 2 layers of this thick armoring leather. But then I realized I have this little buckle, I have a buckle that's going to be sandwiched between it, and then also the suede that everything's getting attached to. So that ends up being 5 layers of leather, and these just weren't going to handle it because they were already kind of maxing out with just 2 layers of the armoring leather. So I had to purchase some new stuff on Amazon, which are these 1/2-inch Chicago rivets. Super simple. I can put a link in the description below if you want to go with something similar, but really helpful. I'm using those ones on these 3 layers right here. Everything else is working just fine with my smaller 1/4-inch Chicago screw rivets. So yeah, everything's buttoned down now. This is just going to be a test mock-up, but everything for the top plate is ready to go. I'll take everything apart once I get to the dyeing process. That way, none of these brass rivets are going to get gunked up with any of the dye. But this is just for my mock-up purposes, tested on my arm. As you probably saw, here I was going back and forth, trying to figure out exactly the curvature that I was going to need for these plates. So it's all good. I'm really liking the way it's looking, especially once I conform it to my arm. Right now it's kind of still sitting a little flat, but once we buckle it down and it's on the arm, it actually will conform even more around the arm. It just looks really, really nice. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do here. Initial thoughts are that I'm going to use these Chicago screw rivets, the small ones for now, and blast them through these 2 layers, and that will hold this plate down for now. Then, once we actually get to doing the hidden blade, and I put that other plate on top of this, we can go back to the longer screws, because then you'll have, once again, double it up. But it should make a good, nice mounting point for the next piece that will go underneath it. So for the meantime, I think that will be what I do. The other option I could do is just sew this in, but the fact that there's going to be nothing else really sewn on this, it's just a little concerning to me, because then it just doesn't match up. But what I can do is make sure that that is looking consistent with this. So I think the rivets are going to be the way to go. So of course, that's going to be the next process as we go along. Probably the shirt's going to change again, as it's just getting a little too late once again for me to continue on. But we have everything we need now, so that's pretty exciting. And so the next thing you'll see is finishing up this base plate on the bottom, and then it's going to be ready for the dyeing process. So I'll check in again once that's completed. So here we go. All right, and we are back. This is day 3. Of course, got a different shirt on, and here we go. We finished up the process that we needed to, so let's take a quick look. Working on the base of the gauntlet. Of course, you probably saw that it took me quite a bit of time to actually form this to my arm and figure out exactly where I want it to be. And of course, that's just a convenient thing to do. Check and double check. That's highly recommended, because you don't want to be wasting leather. So especially here, I just really wanted to figure out exactly where it was going to line up on the bottom portion of my arm, while this was on the top and curved. So that's a big portion of it. The other part that I did, it took quite a bit, was figuring out exactly where I wanted these rivets to be placed on the gauntlet. I actually just ended up lining them up with the buckle that will be coming from here. So we've got our straps that we just quickly clipped out. They're 1/2 inch. They fit these buckles. The buckle will go on basically a looped piece of leather. We'll put a hole through each side and then attach it down. Hopefully this makes sense. And then we'll attach the buckle to here, and then from the other side we'll take another strap and sandwich it underneath here, and then we'll come through, and then we'll just buckle everything down. So I know it doesn't look exactly like there's a lot of room for these buckle systems to work, but once it's conformed to the arm, everything works out pretty well. So that's the idea behind all of that, and it shouldn't interfere too much once we put another base plate on with the hidden blade attached. Other thing you can see is the eyelet. I didn't have a punch that was big enough for the eyelet hole, so I just used 3. So definitely there's a tip right there. If you don't have like a punch that's big enough, just improvise. And let's say, you know, this basically just took me three punches and it was good to go. So pretty easy, but just, you know, kind of get creative as you go along if you don't have all the right tools right away. So that's that. I'll give you a quick look at the backside to see exactly what this looks like. Everything riveted down, suede's nice and comfortable on the arm, and yeah, that's basically it. Just a quick thing on those Chicago screw rivets. They make it really easy to mock this stuff up, put it all together, make sure it's working on your arm, and then you can take it all apart because they are just screws. So definitely, I really like using these Chicago screw rivets, and I would highly recommend it if you're doing a similar project, just because you don't have to go through the actual hammering rivets, and which are much more permanent. So yeah, definitely that's really cool. Next process will be to dye the leather. As you can see, one of my strips from a previous project is already ready to go. So this will be about the color. So it's definitely going to get a lot darker than it is right now, but it should look pretty cool once that is done. I'm going to use this chocolate brown leather dye from Phoebe's, or probably said that wrong, but I'm going to be using that again. And so this is what it's going to look like. It's going to look pretty cool. So we'll dye it, once we take everything apart, then we will seal it. Then we will bevel the edges, and then we will put it all back together. So that's going to be it. Quick note, I did find what I'm going to be using for the top plate up here, the gold looking top plate, and here. And I found a brass sheeting on Amazon that I'm just going to purchase and then use tin snips to cut it out. So I'll just trace my template design, put it on there, and then we'll probably just rivet it down where the rivets currently are. So that's pretty exciting. I think it'll look pretty good, and then we just got to figure out how we're going to do the blue and red. I think they're jewels. I'm not exactly sure what they are, so if you know what they are, just give it a little shout out in the description below and possibly help us out. But yeah, so this is coming right along. In the next video, we are going to get to the dyeing, so it's going to start looking more and more like Bayek's Gauntlet from here on out. So stick with us, and we'll see you on the next Libertas video.